Okay, welcome to our 15th virtual salon for Techspressionism. My name is Devonte Bradley, otherwise known as Davo, and with me is Colin Goldberg, the founder of this wonderful movement of ours and this rapidly growing community. Today, we actually have some interesting things on the agenda. We're going to kick things off with our regular business presentations with three artists. We have today Andrea Bonaceto, Tommy Mintz, and Clive Holden, who are going to be presenting today. One of the three was actually kind of made headline news with his NFT collaboration with Sophia from Hanson Robotics? Yes, Hanson Robotics collaboration.
That's it.
Yep. And yeah, that was kind of a big deal, or is kind of a big deal. So we're all looking forward to hear from Andrea about that and whatever else he's working on. And then after our presentations, we have our debut for our Techspressionism COLLAB exhibition. It's going to be the exhibition of the first collaboration project. It's got 8 artists in it, myself included. It was a very exciting, kind of long, drawn out process, but it was well worth the wait, I believe, and I hope everyone will enjoy it once we get to it. But until then, let's get to those presentations. I asked everyone involved in this to please keep themselves muted if you're not presenting. And with that, I give the floor to Andrea. Go ahead.
Thanks, Devonte. How long do I have for the presentation?
You have 15 plus minutes ish.
Okay.
Thereabouts. We're kind of fast and loose with that.
Perfect. No, I'm happy, first of all, to present here because Colin was probably one of the first people I approached. I mean, he approached me on Instagram when I went public, with what I was doing. So yeah, I mean, is really good. I think, the community, you put together with everything is really great, really welcoming, and I really like it. I mean, my story is a bit weird because I don't have a formal art background, and I've been, involved into art in some shape or form throughout all my life, but nothing, formally. Like I have a financial background. I'm an investor in the blockchain space. I followed the blockchain space since the very beginning, and so I also followed the NFT space from the very beginning. And because of my art interest, when the NFT space came in, I was like, wow, the planets are aligned, and I can now merge my interest for technology with the interest for art. And so, from the very beginning, I started exploring it. I decided to go public with what I was doing. And then, it escalated quite quickly. The way the project came together with the Sophia the robot was as follows. So I went public, with my art, and one of my friends, Mari, approached me and said, okay, nice artworks, but nice portraits, but one question, where is my portrait? Why didn't do a portrait of myself? I'm like, okay, send me a picture and I'm gonna do it. So he sends me the picture, I do the portrait, and because I knew that it was linked with Sophia the robot, then when I showed him the portrait, I was like, okay, I think contemporary art is a lot about making, a statement, like trying to come up with something, innovative on top of, the aesthetic connotation of the artwork. So I proposed him to basically go and do something together with Sophia, where, I would do the portraits of Sophia and the other key people from the team, namely David Hanson, the creator of Sophia the robot, and Ben Gozel, the AI mastermind behind Sophia. And then, I was like, we could see how Sophia, can start from these artworks and then, create from there. And to be honest, I didn't know what to expect. I also didn't know if they would like this idea. But when I presented it to David and Ben, they really loved it. And so we started working on it. It took a few months, and it was, crazy process, like very interesting. It was also quite challenging because we were spread on different time zones. So I'm in London right now. David and Sophia are in Hong Kong, and the gallery that helped us during this art sale is called Ivy Gallery, and they're based in LA. So it was, difficult to coordinate, but we did that. And it's also important to note that this was done, fully remotely. So it was a project that from beginning to end was delivered fully remotely. And the steps, were in the end, quite simple. So Sophia started from my artworks, and then you can think like as a kid, let's say, looks at a tree, and then with the, the experience he or she has, during his or her life, she basically draws the tree that is the result of her experience. Sophia pretty much did the same. You want me to share the screen? Yes, of course. Yes, I can show you while I talk some of the stuff that I do. Can you see my screen? So these are some of the artworks. But basically, Sophia took my artworks, and then also other pictures were fed into her brain, basically her neural network. And then through several iterations, she basically arrived at some final results, like some final output. So we sold the artworks on Nifty Gateway. This is the website. The one that we sold were like 4 open editions. Like one was like Sophia portraying David, and there was Marcello, and there was Sophia, Ben Gozel, and then we did some transitions as well, basically going from where is it? Basically going from from my piece, then morphing into Sophia's piece, and then going back, into my piece. And these were limited editions, were 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then one piece was sold at the auction, and this Sophia instantiation. Actually, now they withdraw it from Nifty, so you cannot see it on Nifty anymore. And this piece also came with a physical artwork. So during the last hour of the drop, actually, we had a live stream from Reuters, where they basically went with the crew to Answer Robotics Labs, and this piece also came with a physical artwork, as I said. So basically, there was a physical version of the piece, like drawn by Sophia with a physical brush. And then the collector that actually got the piece, who goes by the name of 888, no one knows who he is. It's like the Satoshi Nakamoto of digital art. Also had the opportunity to basically show his face to Sophia, and then Sophia to look at his face and incorporate himself, into the artwork. But then he didn't want to show his face, so he sent us a picture of his arm, all like painted in weird colors, and Sophia took that and then basically closed the artwork live, the physical one, with a few last brush strokes, and that was the piece that also he got on top of the digital piece. And then in general, the artworks that I do, as you see, like I do mostly 2 things: portraits and digital art. I started actually with portraits, doing portraits of family and friends, 33 family and friends. And then I went from there, and I did also these are all my friends, my mother, my father, my girlfriend, people that I met. I also have a basking license here in London. So he's a guy, for instance, I met playing here in London.
En la industria de la piratería, Fiona
What?
en MP3.
What's that? I said basking license, and the music soundtrack came. And these are more like of the abstract stuff that I did more like at the beginning. And I was doing that on acrylic, with acrylic colors, mostly on paper and canvas. And then I, let's say, went into buying an iPad Pro, starting doing digital art, mostly vectorial art. So the last ones that you see here, like, let's say this one of George Floyd, is a vectorial artwork drawn on an iPad. And now I'm doing an hybrid of both, to be honest. I still like to do the physical ones, but also the digital one. So now I'm, to be honest, in a phase where I'm trying to understand a bit my next steps. It was a big, also psychological, it was a lot, all this thing with Sophia, with the drop, with that happened. So I'm now trying to calm down and understand, as next steps, also what project, I should focus on. And I'm still exploring it. This, as you can see, this Bob Dylan, this is Nietzsche, Ezra Pound. I also did some artists that, I admire. These are 2 Italian poems, Eugenio Montale and Dino Campana, that I really loved. Then I started doing portraits as well of people I think are, giving a positive impact, like creating a positive impact in society, like, the co-founder of Ethereum, the co-founder of Twitter, people behind Sophia as well. So this is pretty much the concept. And, let's see, I'm quite open as well to new ideas, and I'm not really set in stone to do this forever. One thing that for me is very interesting is that with non-fungible tokens, you can also explore hybrids of different kind of art. So 2 other things that I really like a lot are poetry and music. So I'm hoping that at some point, you could have a dynamic artwork with the music, going underneath like an original track. You can sell it as an NFT, or you can have a poem illustrated as, William Blake used to do, and you can actually sell it as a unique non-fungible token. I think this will unlock a lot of new also business models and way to create and to channel any form of art. So I'm very open, to explore all these things. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if you have any questions, if it's also open for questions, but I think I'm done talking about myself.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Your work is amazing. And also, again, congratulations on your collaboration.
Thanks.
Also want to apologize for whatever happened in the latter part of your presentation. I'm not quite sure what that was. I guess spammer got into the Zoom or something happened, but I think that's what it was about. But they're gone. I kicked them out. So if anyone has any questions for Andrea or comments.
I see some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, the screen, I did share the screen, and how to apply on Nifty Gateway. The thing with Nifty Gateway now is that they're really like overwhelmed right now with a lot of things. It's becoming a bit of a platform where VIPs go to sell NFTs, like even musicians like Calvin Harris made a sale there, The Weeknd made a sale there. So when I entered into Nifty Gateway was basically months ago, where let's say the interest of the NFTs was not as high as it is right now. So now I think they do have an application process, but yes, they are really bombarded basically. So it's tough.
Anybody else have any questions about the artwork itself or anything like that?
I have a question, Roz.
All right, go for it.
Andrea, thank you very much. I love your openness, and those portraits are interesting. Do you have any artists that that you particularly that were influential to you in terms of doing your portraits or other works?
Let's say 2 that for sure are influential, like quite classical, are like Van Gogh in the way he used colors, Kandinsky as well. Like one book that for me was very influential was Concerning the Spiritual in Art by Kandinsky. And after I actually read that book, I started drawing really, really compulsively. And, I got that book when I was 30 years old. Kandinsky started drawing when he was 30 years old. The book came to me in a weird way. I was at a blockchain conference and I met like a guy that was interested in rare books. He asked me for a place in Rome to find a rare bookstore, like a bookstore selling like rare books. We went there together. And the owner of the place told us, okay, wait, I need to give to this book. And then that was the book of Candy. So it came to me. I like to see, things happening to me in a fluid way. And then, I'm like, okay, whatever, let's read this book. And then it ended up being quite influential. Then other artists I really like is Modigliani, you know, for his portraits, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So all of them, I think there is something of all of them into what I do.
And I
And
like
then also
you mentioned William Blake. I mean, he's such a different character. You know, he went his own way, but he combines spirit, religion, poetry, art, everything, you know. So
exactly. I also like, you know, to think that I don't like to be, you know, I like a fluid way of experiencing art as well. You know, where not necessarily you need to only focus on visual art. You can also focus on other things and then, you know, meld them together and, you know, craft something which is new. And I think with NFTs, you know, it gives you the possibility to channel that through the public, you know, to create original content in a new way. And yeah, that's very good for artists as well, because I think also if you consider like the fees that platforms like Nifty Gateway take compared to other galleries, like they are taking 15-20%. So when you compare to like the traditional
your
world is
gallery
completely
takes
different.
50%.
Yeah, and also a very important thing, with all the artworks that you sell as NFTs, forever you're gonna make 10% in royalties. So whenever there is a secondary sale, the art is gonna be paid straight away 10%. So I think it's also good, you know, for the way artists are, you know, remunerated for the work that they create.
Thank you.
Can you,
You're welcome.
so thanks for showing this amazing work, and it's such a cool project. And I wonder if you could comment even more on that, the difference between the traditional art market and what you've experienced with the NFTs. How were you selling work previously? Was it through a gallery? And without giving information that you don't want to give, what is sort of the difference with pricing in the traditional art world versus what you experienced with the NFTs? Yeah.
I mean, I have no experience in the traditional art world because I wasn't selling anything before, like in the traditional world. But from what I heard is, I mean, there are some dynamics that are still similar, I think. It's just that it's a completely new space. So, you know, you start from scratch. And the people that, the average collector in the art world is not the average collector in the NFT space. The average collector in the NFT space is someone that made a lot of money with Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies very early, likes art, and is really pushing, you know, the space to evolve. So I was myself, you know, connected with some of these people, so this for sure, you know, helped. And also, you know, one thing that I like is that people in the blockchain space are a bit weird, which is good. They're like,
I agree.
They are like non-conventional, you know. So when then you create something where oh, you can do art and do it on the blockchain, they go mad with it. They're like, okay, we'll do it, you know, we'll go in like properly. And then, you know, if you take also the pandemic element, you know, the people couldn't go to physically, you know, to galleries. So it was a way to do things in a new way. So, you know, it's difficult for me to compare the two. I would say that they're like two different worlds, but for sure there is something for the traditional artwork that can be taken from the NFT art world and, you know, and reuse, you know. I think it's important that from an aesthetical standpoint as well, you know, there is a certain bar, you know, because now with NFTs, you really see a lot of stuff, right? From GIFs to like artworks. So I think you do need to set the bar at a certain level, you know. So it's important, I think, to have people with a lot of experience in the traditional art space that they come into the NFT space and they say, okay, look, actually, this is very good, you know, artwork. And this, of course, art is subjective, I know, but you know, you don't need to reinvent the wheel basically from scratch, I'm saying. No, well, I was just distracted because I saw another question coming up. Can you explain a bit more about Sophia's participation in your work?
Oh, hold on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Patrick did have a question for you, and then after Patrick, Colin had something he wanted to ask you as well.
Okay. Anyway, good to meet you. This is super interesting. Actually, the thing is that Nagin, who's always in here, who's also in here, she and I lived in Abu Dhabi for 5 years, and remember when Sophia got her
citizenship,
got her citizenship to Saudi. So you know, this is super interesting. And so anyway, another thing is that Kandinsky is also my starting point back in 1990. In other words, is that's exactly the book that got me going on my painting.
Okay.
You know, so that's great. You know, I'm glad to see somebody, you know, hitting the same touchstone. So so anyway, what happens is that I'm just kind of wondering is that, you know, every artist has kind of their, you know, their process, their style, you know, that sort of thing that they establish for themselves. And the thing is that I think every experience we have, you know, affects us in some way. So did the collaboration with Hanson Robotics, you know, add something to your artwork, and if so, how did it affect you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it showed me the potential of what I was doing, in the sense of how you could explode my artworks in a way that was very abstract, that I actually like, and I would say even probably enjoy more, you know, to go with more abstract art. It showed the abstract potential, basically, of my portraits. Because what I try to do with the portraits is always to try to express the essence of the person. In fact, I understand that if I know the person personally well, for me it's easier to try to convey that. I don't know how to explain, but when I look at it, I say like, okay, it's okay, this is fine, it makes sense. With Sophia, it was basically the opportunity to also, you know, bring it one step further and like go almost beyond the portrait itself. And this is something that I'm currently now thinking about, to be honest. It really made me ask myself new questions, and I don't have yet the answers.
Yeah. Actually, the one thing is like this notion of concerning the spiritual and art and how we work with technology and that sort of thing. This is one thing we talk about here in the group, is the idea that saying, okay, where does the spirit of art, you know, emerge from, you know, the machine, from the technology? And I think that's, you know, what you're dealing with. I think that's great.
In fact, that's also a controversial point, if you want, right? Because some people might argue AI cannot create art. You know, it's bullshit. Like, what is it? But the way I see it is that it's basically a new avenue for, you know, even, you know, many people to then, you know, to follow. Like you do something like that where you basically say, okay, AI, robots and humans in the future will collaborate together, not only on operational tasks, but also on creative tasks. So maybe now an AI, you know, does not have the metaphysical element of us humans, you know, does not have the concept of, you know, death, of, you know, meaningless of their lives, you know, for now. But through time, they will evolve, and we might, you know, arrive at a phase where the singularity is achieved, where the intelligence of AI is at the level of humans, and actually goes also beyond that. And at that point, you know, basically you need to start somewhere, right? And I think now merging like a human with an AI, it can craft something that creates an emotion in whoever sees that and raises new questions. That was really the point, raising new questions without providing any answer. And then, you know, everyone goes home and they do whatever they want.
Cool. I had a question. I'll jump in, I guess, to save Dava the trouble of calling on me. So I did an interview with you, Andrea, recently that's on our YouTube channel, and you mentioned the metaverse.
Yes.
And kind of since then, you know, like I recently minted an NFT and sold my first NFT, and then I got a request from someone over Twitter to create another one as a commission for his CryptoVoxels gallery, and I didn't know what CryptoVoxels was. So I went into the link that he sent me, and I saw that it was sort of like, you know, this shared VR space where you can buy virtual real estate. And I guess there's other platforms similar to that, like Decentraland is another one. I mean, do you envision a day when all of these sort of disparate platforms are interconnected in some way, or if the metaverse could ever exist in a way that, you know, the sort of the idea of cyberspace, as William Gibson, for instance, presented it, where it's a consensual, hallucination or consensual virtual reality. Like, do you think that that's something that's possible, that these different places would be interoperable, or that there would be some sort of an open source standard where people could go in with a headset and basically be in this, this metaverse?
Yeah. So I just shared the link because what you mentioned is very interesting, and I wrote a blog post about it on Medium where I talk about NFTs and as well the metaverse. So I would say two things. The first is that I'm extremely bullish on the metaverse, and the metaverse is basically, you can think as a parallel world where everything is an NFT, because NFTs are not only for digital art. Anything that is non-fungible, so that is unique, can be represented as an NFT. Like a house can be an NFT, a car can be an NFT, a guitar can be an NFT. In this metaverse, you exist in the form of an avatar, and you go around, and there are museums, houses, you can meet other people, and yeah, CryptoVoxel, there are also some of the artworks that are sold on Nifty that are in a museum there that you can go and check them out. And think about how democratic it is in terms of access to opportunity. I'm originally from a very small city in Italy called Viareggio, 60,000 inhabitants. Now I live in London, but let's say I was still in Viareggio. If I want to access, a museum with NFTs, and I probably in the future will be able to do it by going into the metaverse, meeting, some collectors and gallerists there, and then I can engage with people on Twitter. So, it's a very interesting concept, and I hope that these, of course, will go together with also meeting people in person. Not that we are like becoming avatars ourselves in our real life. So this is one point. Super bullish on the metaverse. Second point, what Colin was saying is basically the omniverse, to have a sort of interoperable metaverse and have a situation where from me to going from Italy to the UK, and I to take a plane. And same way, you could have a channel to go from Decentraland to CryptoVoxel or to Somnium. There is another metaverse actually very popular for crypto art and NFT art. So I think we are going there, and this is just the very, very beginning. So there is so much potential, and is actually, amazing that even though the experience right now is so bad because these metaverses are not good, like they don't really, it looks like Super Mario Bros in the, I don't know, 95. It's not like a gaming, like 2021 experience, but still people, they use it. There is a community that is very, very engaged. So imagine when this will become very, very polished. You will have an avatar that looks, exactly like ourselves. You go there with a headset, you can meet people. New generations will not need to be convinced about that. You see, like Generation Z is already extremely familiar with a digital world. They never even experienced a non-digital society. So for them, it's a no-brainer. So for me, is the next logical step, and NFTs are going to be a catalyst for this to happen. Second Life, one second, someone is mentioning Second Life in the chat. The thing about Second Life and the big difference with Second Life is this: Second Life is a centralized platform. Okay, there is a company behind Second Life, and if tomorrow this company says, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna shut down Second Life," Second Life is gone, or they're gonna repurpose their business model or whatever. Things are gonna change in Second Life. These metaverses are decentralized platform, meaning that there is no unique point of failure. That's why people are spending hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions, in purchasing land, in purchasing a house on the metaverse. Like, you would be like, are you mad? You're gonna buy a virtual house that you cannot even live in? Yeah, you can. I mean, you cannot live in as a person now, but you can create a museum. You can create the Louvre in the metaverse, and you can buy the land. And this is something that no one is ever gonna take it away from you. You own it, and it's gonna stay there forever. Things that doesn't happen in Decentraland. That was gives you the Second Life. It just gave you like the gist of what could be to have like a life in a digital world. But here you can actually have you can buy stuff. You can own things. You can really it brings it to the next level.
All right. Well, this is actually a conversation that I'd love to like be able to continue, but unfortunately, we do have two other presenters that we need to get to before the end of this meeting. But there is one more question from Cynthia. I did promise her that she would get to that question. She wants to know. She wanted you to explain a bit more about Sophia's participation in your work, and after that, then we can go ahead.
Yeah. So Sophia's creative process is through her neural network, which is basically another word to mention, let's say, her brain. Okay, so she looks at my artworks, she looks at other artworks as well, and then, you know, she produces an output, and then this is fed back into her neural network. You know, we went through multiple iterations up to the point where we did actually like, you know, everything that we saw. We felt it was at a certain level, and that was the final version. I know that David Hanson also put into Sophia's neural network for Sophia instantiation, so the final piece, many things, even, you know, a portrait of Cleopatra, because he wanted also to encompass, you know, the beginning, like the ancient physiognomy, you know, of a face. There was also a portrait of his wife, of you know, Marcello Ben himself, my portrait of Sophia, other portraits of Sophia that I made that were not part of the drop. So many things went into this, and then, you know, you see it at the end as the result of many iterations, because I said Sophia produced an output, then this went back in, it went back in, and then the final piece also had Sophia drawing, you know, they're basically having all this knowledge in her neural network, and then also with the brush, being able to actually do the brush strokes herself. And that was also the physical piece. So that was pretty much the creative process.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you, Andrea, for your for everything so far with your presentation.
Just one last thing, about the Nifty. If Nifty close, because I see one question, these things are in the blockchain. They exist on the blockchain, so they will live. Even if the platform shuts down, they will remain.
Gotcha. All right, well, we can give you a round of applause now, I think, without further ado.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. It was a pleasure to have you. And that was my cat apparently also giving you applause. So next up, we have Tommy Mintz. Are you ready for your presentation?
Absolutely. And I just like to chime into what Andrea was talking about there, of like thinking about how the digital world has changed how we like think about space or property and objects and value. I have a slideshow here actually that I'd like to try to share. Let me see if I can pull this up quickly. You tell me if, I just lost everybody. So it looks like I shared correctly. So I'm going to quickly go through a slideshow actually that I've put together. Let me know if I'm going too fast or if my audio drops out, please. I'm on a wireless microphone. So,
oh, before you get started, you mind
yes.
introducing yourself? Like, tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to, talk about me and my work. My name is Tommy Mintz, and I'm an artist. I see that. Okay, yeah, that's on. I have an algorithmic process that I've been using to create time-lapse images. I'm fascinated by our sense of time, place, and memory. And I think our digital tools that we're using these days and methods of creating our understanding of space and time, like blockchain, really does affect how we understand our senses and what we value in our perception, right? And in the past, people talked about like metaphors of like clockwork, thinking, and like the mechanical ways that we worked. And now we're sort of reframing our metaphorical understanding of, our brain as neural network and all these sort of new ways of understanding who we are, where we are, and when we are. And I like to think of like Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Message to sort of understand how the digital medium affects what and how we remember, how we understand ourselves, both individually and collectively as a culture, right? Being affected by our digital tools. So as a photographer, I'm a photographer, I document the world around me, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the extraordinary privilege I have had of growing up and living in Lower Manhattan my whole life. I'd like to also acknowledge and question our history by naming, the Munsee, Lenni, Lenape tribe, the Canarsie tribe, the Unkachug, and Shinnecock tribes, who peopled the lands that I take pictures of now. So I'm going to go through some slides of previous work, just to give you a sense. In elementary school, I spent a lot of time in the darkroom at the Children's Aid Society on Sullivan Street, kind of a legendary community center, and I still feel quite kinship attached to community centers. In high school, I worked in dark rooms. I loved the identity of being a photographer. In the 90s, I went to Sarah Lawrence College and had access to computers. And I was able to scan film and piece together using software on Windows computers in the 90s, kind of large collages. I would make prints on color laser printers, tiled across multiple pages, and put them together using like acrylic matte medium to create wall-sized prints. So yeah, I did a lot of that in the middle of Sarah Lawrence. I took some time off, studied alternative processes at the New School, learned platinum palladium printing from Arkady Luvov, who's kind of a master printer, and opened my mind up to sort of thinking about the print, and really reconsidering the print itself. And that's something that sort of has been a challenge, and one of these things that I think about, like, what is the way we present our artwork, especially digitally, now that we're coming into it. So I went to graduate school at Queens College, CUNY, Queens College, and studied with Tony Gonzalez, who is a gum bichromate printer, and he does digital negatives for gum bichromate printing, and I was trying to make digital negatives for platinum palladium printing. And he also introduced me to other printing processes such as cyanotype, which I love the color of, and also the method of making negatives from prints on paper, and you wax them to make them translucent, and then you could print very, much like a negative made on plastic. So yeah, another side note, I studied dance as an undergraduate at Sarah Lawrence College, and I think that informs my work and understanding of movement and the human body through space. So I choreographed some work thinking about choreographing for creating a collage. I found places where I'd see people move through space in interesting ways, trying to isolate that. This is all by hand. I'm cutting this out in Photoshop, using the mouse and tools. Here's a self-portrait of myself cleaning, and I cut that out. I also have this image that I was able to print, and actually, let me back up one second. In 2002, I was asked to submit 10 prints to a show called Identity Paradox at the Austin Museum of Digital Art. And I priced out these prints, and it was so expensive that it was cheaper for me to buy the new Epson 7600, which changed my life. And I had the ability to fabricate prints on any material, like huge lengths. And you can see those strips of paper here. These are 24 inches wide coming out of my Epson 7600. And here I walked around a tree, cut it out from its forest, and each image, and stitch those together. So that's a very large print. So movement, time, space. I'm still a photographer. I go around taking pictures, like Henri Cartier-Bresson, that idea of images a la Suavette, just observing the things we see around us, the spaces that we're in. I printed these out on very thin paper, rolled them up like posters, and presented them as cheap shots and sold them for $5 a print, like posters. And I missed these old poster shops that I used to love as a kid and was trying to replicate that a little bit. So I have these prints printed on thin paper that I then hung in Queens College library on the 6th floor, they have an art center, and along their walls, they have heaters that have hot air rising up along the walls, and this started to rustle the print, the paper that was there. And I kind of fell in love with that materiality. The ability of the paper to move was something that I found really exciting, and I've been continuing to think about that thinness and of the capability of paper. So let me now jump ahead to my current work. So right now I wrote an algorithm that creates a collage. And I wrote this after asking all my programmer friends if they would do it for me, and they were all too busy, always. That's how it is, right? So I put it off for a long time. I had this idea in maybe 2004. In 2012, I was asked to have a show at a gallery and make a proposal. And I proposed to do this thing I've always been thinking about. I'm going to do it. And so at that time, the Raspberry Pi computer was also released. And this was sort of the perfect tool for me to dedicate a computer to something, that I wanted to do, which was generate a collage for me. I was tired of doing all this sort of repetitive task, and I thought the computer could do it. So the collages that I'm generating, did I just lose everybody? I'm so sorry. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? I feel like okay, thank you. So these collages, thank you so much. These collages that I'm generating are generated algorithmically, and the algorithm is detecting areas of difference. And the way it works is I take a picture that's a baseline picture. I call it the baseline image. And then subsequent images are compared to that, right? So here's a second image, and the difference is turned into what I call an alpha channel. You might call it a layer mask if you're using Photoshop. And this is saved as a JPEG that I call alpha channel. And so then I have that tool of comparison, and then I lay in those white areas. The white areas are added, the black areas are left alone. So now I'll take another picture. Here's photo 2 compared to the baseline. That's the difference added together. And I iterate that over and over and over. So I would sit there with my Raspberry Pi computer doing this. It was kind of a beautiful thing. And here's these collages that I was generating. Here's what it looked like when I was there with my computer. On the left-hand side, I had a light stand. The top of the light stand, I had my webcam. I had my Raspberry Pi. Can I annotate this here? Let's see. I'm going to mess everything up if I'm trying to get fancy. I'm not going to try and annotate, sorry. You can see the Raspberry Pi dangling off the light stand. There's wires. It's kind of a messy, DIY. I like that aesthetic though. And here's what was being generated, this collage on the right-hand side of people walking by. And there's a lot of edges. I'm very interested in these edges that are being created that I wouldn't, all these decisions that are being made that I would never make. Here's how it was installed in the gallery. People would see themselves. The Raspberry Pi was taped to the wall. There's a camera taped to the wall. Also attached to the wall was a printer. And every so often, the collages that were being generated would be printed, and I taped those prints to the wall in the background. You could see it close up here. And then along another wall, I had a series of repurposed digital photo frames that I loaded with my series of collages that you can see the animation of the generation of these collages happening. So I continued to iterate this. I showed at Maker Faire a lot. Maker Faire is a really great community that I found super supportive. Next to me there were the IEEE folks who told me what I was doing was somewhat the same compression that digital television uses, but sort of I'm doing it in reverse or something. So it's interesting because I was noticing how people have been sort of noticing that same glitchiness that I kind of love here. So yeah, it kind of does look like digital TV in a way when you're seeing it at this low resolution version. So these low resolution cameras were what the first Raspberry Pis could run. Version 2, I got a faster Raspberry Pi. I could try to connect some different buttons, add a little more interactivity. I dragged it around, battery powered on a cart, and did outdoor pictures at Maker Faire in 2015 at the Queen's Hall of Science. Here's a picture that was generated there. I was invited to show at it's a movie festival, I guess, outdoors, projecting this work onto, and I don't think this is supposed to be a video. I'm not going to try to click it, but I have videos up on YouTube of people interacting with it and seeing themselves projected up onto this beautiful old building in Snug Harbor on Staten Island. here's another movie I'm going to skip. So in 2016, there's another version of the Raspberry Pi released, which at this point could support me using a real digital camera. So I took my Canon 5D, which was the best camera I had at that time, access to at that time, and started taking pictures, which revealed a level of detail that was so different than before, that I was able to detect movement in ways that I wasn't able to before. And pointed my camera at things like flowers in the breeze, and getting the change of position in those was kind of a fantastic thing to notice. Hope, Hackers on Planet Earth, was another venue that was like, come show your work here, because I printed out the code and showed 3 versions of that, and you could see a guy zooming by on a Segway on the Segway track back there. The Raspberry Pi Zero came out in 2017, and I set that up to be like a wearable version of this, where I just stuck it on my helmet or my backpack or my wrist and wore it around, and then would unload thousands of collages at the end of the day. And I still haven't gone through all of these. I mean, this was where I went down a rabbit hole. I was like, oh, maybe not. So I concentrated a little more on the high resolution, upgrading my screen. I had a lot of trouble with battery powered screens. Were really expensive, were the sort of thing that slowed me down most. How did I control my computer? Eventually I started using desktop mirroring on an iPad. I just have my Raspberry Pi running remote desktop and a Wi-Fi hotspot, and I log into that and use that remote control. So I generated a lot of these. I stand somewhere for a couple minutes to a couple, more, and just take pictures on a tripod in the beginning. And I've started to move the camera. I haven't gotten to that yet. So on a tripod, I'm just really detecting the movement of people. And then, oh, here's some more of that. It's one of my favorites. This one sold. I'm printing, by the way, on dye sublimation on aluminum. A lot of these prints I'll hopefully show in just a second, an installation view. And here I'm moving the camera a little bit. And this creates these wonderful edges. When I reposition my layers, I align things first, run it through my algorithm, and the edges of the frame become prominent, which is something that I really enjoy, this sort of so I'm turning my camera. I tried to plot things out very carefully to create panoramics that I was then printing on, here's a detail of it, printing on fabric. So I have dye sublimation on metal in this show. So the Hudson Guild asked me to do a second show in 2019. And I applied for a grant to do experimental printing. Dye sublimation on aluminum is beautiful. It's not cheap. And also the signs.com print on fabric is the cheapest thing I found to make as large a print as you possibly can. So that fabric print on the long wall here, 54 inches by 168 inches, it have this, and I have a video here that I know is not going to run. I have a fan blowing on this in the gallery so that it moved, very much like that paper, emphasizing the materiality of that fabric as opposed to the hard, cold quality, which I also enjoy, of the dye sublimation on aluminum, and how that describes a digital image in a very digital way. So here's some dye sublimation on aluminum prints that have been shown in a number of venues at this point. It's been very well received. These prints are a variety of sizes. This is 6 inches by 4 inches. It's kind of small. I love the idea of making these small postcard sized gems. And here, I'm going back, is 60 inches by 40 inches that I'm able to now generate very high resolution pictures using 50 megapixel cameras. And I'm processing that later on my Mac. So I just had a show where I printed on shower curtains, which was fun, hung those in a circle around people with a split in the middle, so you could walk in the middle and walk around the outside. I carried it on the airplane, in my carry-on. I didn't have to check my bag. This is in Budapest, which is the city I recommend. I'd never been there. I never thought about going. I love it. I love Budapest now. So Puch Gallery in Budapest. And here's a detail of one of the panels that was in that last show. Oh, not last show. It seems so long ago. So I had another show with another set of panoramics and printed this panoramic image on fabric again, wrapped it around a wall, had a fan going on it, so it moved. You see a little fan down there. In relation to those dye sublimation hard edge prints that I kind of trying to, once again, make a contrast. So right now I got another grant to push this even further. I have a really big hot pair of prints that I've gotten ready for, hopefully, a display in public. Here on the west side of Manhattan, there's a community center that I'm involved with called Hudson Guild, right? That has shown my work before, and they have another space. It's on 9th Avenue and 18th Street. They just renovated, and they have public-facing windows. So I'm gonna wrap large prints in a U shape towards the window so people could maybe walk into it or even just view it from outside. So that's an upcoming installation. Here's my work this year. So I'm shooting now with a very high resolution camera. Came down in price. The Canon 5DS it's been discontinued. It's a 50 megapixel full frame, beautiful camera that creates this level of detail that allows for, descriptions of things that you don't see in the moment, that surprise me later, that I find to be one. And Robin Kelsey, I think he teaches at Harvard, wrote a book called Photography and the Art of Chance, which I recommend reading. It's a fantastic book. And in it, he describes how chance, this idea of finding something, happenstance in your pictures, or you happen upon something, or you see it later in your work, is this inherent joy in photography. And I think this process repeats and emphasizes that for me and makes me really excited over and over, this unknown. So that's the last of my slides. Thank you so much for your attention. Parting thoughts, photography, it's interesting to think about, art and science, right? Here we are in this technology space, playing with technological tool as artists, right? And what does that mean, right? And there's some resources over there. I'm happy to, how do I get the print on the shower curtain? Online. I could find the website. I think it was, artscow.com, ARTSCOW might be the website. It was in China. It took 4 weeks to ship, but it was super cheap.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tommy, for your presentation. There's a lot. So photography isn't one of those things that I readily grasp because I just don't have that much familiarity with it, but it's still very interesting to me. And it's amazing what you've been doing and what you're capable of doing. And it's also interesting to me that there's this thing that appears to be a trend now that I've noticed with many people in our movement actually do dye sublimation prints on aluminum for our works. Like piece that I have right behind me is that. I know Francine definitely does that with her work. But yeah, quite a few of us have been using dye sublimation on aluminum for our work. I guess there's just something about it that just makes things seem better. I don't know.
Well, it gives a nice dimensionality to the image, like the way the light penetrates past the pigment, and it really has or dye, and has a it feels modern in a way too. It's not trying to be old fashioned. It's not, when was that made question doesn't come up, which maybe it's very much of its time and it'll look dated soon, but I'm enjoying it right now. Yeah. One last thing is there is a material called transfer ease. If you don't want to go get dye sublimation from a printing facility, you can buy a chemical that you print it out of your normal inkjet printer onto a piece of plastic. You coat any surface with this thing called transfer EEZE, I believe is transfer EEZE. And then you put the plastic, the print on plastic on that and let it do its thing for a minute. You peel off the plastic and the pigment remains on the surface. And I've been experimenting with that and really enjoying that because I like the tactile thing of working as an artist on, on something, and that's part of the conundrum.
All right, well, thank you. Let's see, do we have any questions for Tommy about his process? Any comments about his work? Any praise that you can shower him with? Because, you know, artists always love praise.
I praise.
There you go.
No, the work was really awesome. And I just want to say, like, your students are very lucky to have you as a teacher. I saw you're a professor because you know so much about the traditional techniques and the technological ones and can, you know, teach both of them from either side. And I think that's really valuable for students to see.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tough right now. Everything's closed. Kingsborough's darkroom is definitely closed for another couple semesters. You know,
Oh, wow.
we're not planning on opening the darkroom right now.
So it's all digital.
So it's all digital, absolutely.
Tommy, I really like your work. So I have a couple questions, or they're sort of related. Obviously, the urban environment, since you live in a very urban environment, I find really fascinating. And I really liked the flower image that you showed. Have you done any more in terms of natural landscapes? That was my first question. And then, are you setting up like regular intervals in which you're taking the photographs, or are you winging it, or it's all like programmed in?
So I'll answer the first question first, then the second one. So the answer is, yeah, I point my camera at what's around me. Right now, flowers are blooming. I go to Central Park a lot, right? There's a lot of natural setting there. But yeah, I do get out of the city and photograph outside of the city. If you look at my Instagram feed, I think my most recent post is another daffodil, if you will. You know,
cool.
There's more there. And the second question, in the beginning, I was running everything off a timer, although then I added a button, and I've since stopped actually using the Raspberry Pi in the process, and I'm just out there with my camera like any other photographer pressing the button myself. Okay. I do sometimes have a cable release that I'll attach to my camera on the tripod if I want to keep it really still. So people ignore me, or I'll smile at them. I mean, I do really like being the photographer, you know, out there. People chat. I always have postcards that I'll give people of past shows to explain what I'm doing. You know, people are, I like that exchange on it. You know.
How about at nighttime? Any nighttime photography?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we have two questions lined up for Tommy now. First one being from Roz, and the second one from Susan. So Roz, go ahead.
Hi, Tommy. Oh, that was a beautiful, you have such a, I put it in the remarks, you have such a poetry to your work that I just immediately respond to. And it brought up for me the word discernment. You know, as an artist, I've been recently talking with people a little bit. I remember asking Ann Spalter about this with working with AI, and recently listening to Andrea, like where, you know, there's a poetry in there where an artist's eye is at work, and whether you're working with an AI person or what, I'm just curious where, you know, an AI thing can spit out all these things, but then you throw out thousands of them and go, oh, that's the only one I like. And you train that agent to your visual, whatever it is you have. And in your work, there is a continual poetry of vision that I just call poetry. And I wonder, do you throw out tons of things, or is it, I mean, it's not all automated, right? With this algorithm. I'm just curious where discernment, throwing things away and keeping things comes in. Is that part of why all these things look beautiful? Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, I have hard drives full of images that are part of the process, if you will, you know, building up. Maybe I've gone too far, and I'll step back and look at one of the ones that, you know, was more successful and choose that as the final product. Yeah, and I, you know, I'm not going to share my clicking or typing in my commands, but, you know, I actually have a YouTube channel where I've posted you know, what do you call it when you record your screen? A screencast of me going through the process, and you can sort of see how I enter, you know, the pictures into the program,
Yeah.
and then what comes out, and then choose what happens next.
Yeah. I just
I do.
wondered if you don't show everything, obviously, but I was curious about that because there's always that artist wrestling thing that goes on when you're working with a piece. You know, it's kind of a universal, I think, that with a great work of art anyway. Thanks.
Yeah, the nice thing about working digitally is you don't leave a huge mess behind. You're not, all those extra pictures I didn't waste, a pound of film on or whatever.
But you always have all these more options. I know all these layers in Photoshop drive me crazy, but I go, no, I'll put this one above and below. And some people can't do anything in digital art because then making that decision just drives them. There are many options. I mean, you have to know where you're going or you're just going to make a big mess. So thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation.
Thanks, Ross. I appreciate it.
All right, and next up we have Susan. Go ahead with your question.
I'm not sure.
On.
I wanted to say that I felt feel I have not the same, but a similarity coming from alternative photography and working and alternative work, and then anyway, I can said they were also really information for me, and I'd like
Susan,
to know a little bit
I don't mean
more
to
about
interrupt,
that
but
because I have been a dancer.
Your connection seems to be. Oh, did she cut out completely? Susan, you still here? Are you still with us? Oh no.
Am I back?
Kind of. If you don't mind, would you be able to like type out your question, because it seems like your connection quality is kind of poor and you're just breaking up really bad. Like I'm not even sure Tommy or anybody else could really hear complete thoughts. But if you type it out, I'm sure we could get to that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Still breaking up.
Yeah, it's breaking up pretty bad. Like the only two words that I heard, if you've been speaking for like the past 10 seconds, were breaking up. So I guess we'll wait on that for a second. The joys and wonders of technology, and when it does not actually perform the way we want it to. Comes with the territory.
The beauty of glitches.
Glitches, yeah. You know what? I'm sure there's some artists out there using broken up or disconnected audio from like Zoom meetings to create something. I would not be surprised.
Heard it here first.
I don't know. Actually, we might have somebody in here that could probably run and go do something with that, because we do have quite a few audiovisual artists here. So I don't know. It could be an interesting project for somebody to go down if they're curious.
I was thinking maybe down the road we establish a wallet for the group and mint all of our salons and recordings as NFTs to raise funds for future endeavors.
Ooh.
That'd be interesting.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I'm back. Is it better now?
Yes, 100% better.
Could I say a few things, or have you moved on?
No, we were waiting on you.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, I changed rooms and I went to the kitchen. It's better. So I wanted to say that I felt some similarities to your work, Tommy, and having gone from a darkroom photographer and learning to use alternative photography like cyanotype and those types of things, and then progressing into using digital. And I also was attracted to the idea that you used your dance experience, and because I haven't thought of that, because I was a dancer as a child and to adulthood, I haven't thought of connecting that in my thinking about my digital work. So that I appreciated. So I wanted to say that, and I'm hoping that I might have a little bit of a connection with you, maybe on Instagram, but maybe ask a couple of questions outside the group and connect with you. So that was my question. And thanks for letting me come back, because that was frustrating. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan.
All right.
All right, did I miss anything? No, maybe, yes. Nope, nothing. All right. If there are no further, oh, wait, there is one question I saw earlier in the chat for Tommy before we move on. I think Giovanna wants to know the address of your upcoming show because she's also in New York.
Yeah, because I just heard you say something about you're going to put up some of your work somewhere 9th Avenue. Can you type the address and the date?
Yes. There's no date yet. They haven't reopened the gallery yet because of COVID. So it's
okay.
TBD, but this is in the planning. But yeah, I'll put the address in the chat right now.
Thank you.
And I'll let you know when I'll post to Discord. I'll post the Techspressionism Discord and announce when it'll be up. Absolutely.
Yeah, by the way, guys, if you do have like an upcoming event or an exhibition or show planned, feel free to share in the Discord, because there might be actually somebody in the area that can actually attend. So you never know. So,
oh, actually, we do have one. So the Gramercy Park, our venture partners office, Stata Arta, still call for submission. So I already posted on the Discord.
Yeah, that is a resource that people should definitely use if it's there. I'm always actually kind of plugging Discord because we need people in there. We need people interacting with there. So anyway, if there are no further questions for Tommy, I think we can go slide right into Clive's presentation. Thank you, Tommy, for your time and your presentation. It's a pleasure to have you. And all right, Clive, you have the floor.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Clive Holden, and I've been making work for about 40 years, so I'm going to have to skip over some of the early stuff. Let me just do a screen share thing here. I made experimental films for quite a while, and that's how I got started in visual art. Went to film school and art school, and that's what took over. And then I'm just skipping over this early stuff. I did a big project that I'm maybe best known for called Trains of Winnipeg, that traveled around between 2001 and 2008. And it had a book and a CD and a website artwork and a feature film. And that was a lot of fun. I suppose you could call it multidisciplinary art, although that was a brand new term back then. I just thought of this project as wanting to take the same materials and see how it all interrelated. And it led me to really where I'm going to talk today, getting into more digital art. The Trains Winnipeg project really was digital, but it was digital and film mixed together. I did a digital intermediary and then transferred it to 35mm film for projection at the end. Don't need to do any of that stuff now, which is great. We have high quality digital distribution for free. It's all a much better space for distributing your moving image art now. What I moved into in the late 2000 noughts was net art initially. And I made a bunch of these for 2 or 3 years. I'll show you one in a moment. But that's really the beginning of my making code-based art, which I'm still doing. A lot of my work is hybrid with analog materials, and basically that comes out of my filmmaking. A lot of the early things involved making film loops and turning them into things like GIFs. So I'm going to go over to an artwork right now that's called, let's see now. I'm gonna make sure I get this right here. And this is called dirtyfilm.org. It's still at that address on the web. I had quite a few of these up at one point. was a little era when these were happening. And this work is, as you can see, a series of GIFs made out of Super 8 film Leader, literally dirty film. The art world loves a good pun. And I was often editing films back then, and I'd be throwing film like this on the floor and often thinking, I should make an artwork out of that. And I finally did. This was the first one. And it's a bit deceptively simple looking. It's, but what's exciting about it for me, and it still is to this day, is this is the first time I used JavaScript randomization algorithms, or another way of putting that would be algorithmic chance procedures. So I was really thinking a lot about John Cage and the use of chance in making an artwork, but in this case, embedding it right into the artwork. So that in a sense, the algorithms are acting like jazz musicians. They're almost like, or Indian classical music, where there's a set structure, and within that structure, they're making improvisation decisions on the fly to decide which of the loops are going to end up in the different rectangles. So this work you're seeing now will never be seen this way again. It's a unique viewing of the work, and that's constantly the case. It's continually being refreshed. And in a sense, this is a crude version of what we now call AI. It's the artwork, artificial intelligence collaborating with me and completing the artwork as we watch it. So I find that a very exciting idea, and it really informs a lot of the work I've made since. These net artworks, they led into larger works that I made for offline purposes. So I'll show you one of those now. Let's see. This one's called Wind at Lake Manitoba, which is a big lake near Winnipeg, where I used to live, the center of Canada. And it's made out of a few strands of Super 8 film. And a lot of what I wanted to work on in this case, it's a much bigger work, much more complex work. Like I said, when I moved this tech and kind of hacked it for offline purposes, I was able to do things that were more complex because you're not limited by the internet connection. Not that that's as big an issue now as it was in 2011 when I made this. But what I was thinking about a lot was the live processing of the data as art. So in this case, the metaphor really is that the tree branches are the data, and the wind is processing the tree branches. So we're seeing live processed data. And again, this work is never repeated the same way. It takes about 12 minutes to cycle through, but it cycles through completely differently each time because it's choosing the different, what I call media tiles in different orders all the way through continuously. In a sense, it has an infinite duration. And so I've made quite a few of these, and especially back in that period of time, 2011 to 2015 or so. And I'm definitely now returning to some of this work. It's interesting to think of the AI connections of this, and also my fascination with movement, which ties in with both Andrea and Tommy's work. So a bit of a theme developing today, which is nice. Just let this run for a little bit. You can see how sometimes I can't predict when it's going to happen. The tiles rearrange themselves so that there's a flickering effect through the screen. And that's all very exciting, kind of mirroring the movement of the leaves on the tree branches. For me, it's particularly exciting because it makes it more clear how exciting, how beautiful what we're looking at these days is. I mean, the data itself, not just the images. So these are, traditionally beautiful things, tree branches, but we're looking, it's worth remembering, we're actually looking at, we're looking at digital math, applied math that is creating art live. And that's a very exciting thing. So let's see now. Go back to here. Film.org, and this is how I show a lot of this work now, is in a light box. It's just a TV screen with a picture frame around it. And I usually use a Mac Mini, this Velcroed into the back. And it's really surprising how this changes how the display looks, just putting a simple picture frame around it. And that has turned out to be a very good way to display the work in galleries. And also because sometimes art clients want to buy a thing, you can take a software-based work, put it in one of these and sell them the whole thing. And not that I sell all that much work, but I do some. And it seems to work better, making it into a kind of a quasi thing. And so I've also shown these works in some museum contexts. And this is another one called Un-American Unfamous, was positing the idea that it's un-American not to be famous. And so putting forward that idea that, so what I did is I took a lot of, I was given access to the Black Star photo collection at Ryerson University. And I went into the background of a lot of famous photos and I took out pictures of unfamous people behind famous people. And I put them in this big work that again is never seen the same way twice. You see it's another screening here. They're all continually being changed and updated. And a lot of movement, a lot of rhythm. They're very musical. A lot of my work is very musical. I'm using music analogies a lot of the time when I'm making them. And then 2016 is when I really moved into seamless video loops, which ties back to my filmmaking, but again, they're sort of without duration. They don't, at the beginning, they seamlessly go back to the end. You don't, or from the end to the beginning, I should say. And they really start when you enter the room and leave when you leave the room. And they're usually quite long. This one, a loom for Ani Albers, came out of my reading her essays. And one day I was leaning forward afterwards, doing some coding and three-dimensional video editing, thinking a lot about the vertical and horizontal and depth axes. And I just suddenly thought of her working at a loom, looking at her horizontal and vertical and the depth of her loom that she's working at. And so that's what this work came out of. It took me several months of very patient, meditative coding. And this is the work now. It's the strands of wool I used to make the work lent a really crucial element of the organic variation. You can see in the hair itself, the hair is coming out of each strand of wool. And the point of this 100-minute work is that none of these moments repeat. Every moment throughout the whole 100-minute loop is unique. And so it keeps the mind alive when watching it. It keeps the interest level high because we quickly respond negatively to seeing things that are repeated. One of the challenges with digital art, digital technologies, there's too much precision. And that's part of why I fold in analog materials like film, in this case, wool. Sexy for Morden Felton is called that because it's filled with sixes. And it was a tribute to many of his ideas. This one's 4 hours long. Again, there's every moment is unique through the whole work. And that's a big part of what I do is take live processes. In this case, I'm using some VJ software mixed with quite a few other, I use quite a lot of different software programs. And also this is built up from hand painted 16mm film. So I've got that hybrid element. I'm very much working with digital tools all the time, but I tend to bring in terra firma as well, things that you can touch initially. In this case, the film was painted and then transferred to digital. And you can see the pattern, the rhythm setting up after a while of watching this, where the 6-second jump cut creates a sense of rhythm, which is very important to the work. And then my current work, which I'm about to release, I'm making an art app. It's part of the Internet Mountains project, which I've been making for a few years now. It's included a print series, also on dye sublimation, metallic printing. I use it because it looks like the image did on the screen, that backlit look. And I think it's interesting to think about backlit media as dating back to stained glass windows and even neon, and of course televisions, computer screens. And so these prints, even though they're not backlit, they look backlit. They have a little bit of that diffusion of the light, you know, late Renaissance, you know, glazing, etc. It's a beautiful effect. Now this work, this latest Internet Mountain work, is a series of 20-second loops. They all can function independently. They're all seamless loops, 20 seconds each. And in this case, I've assembled them, and I'm going to be putting this into, I'm building an app that will be two forms of app. It will be a standard computer application or software program that'll be on a desktop computer. And then there'll be a remix version as well that will be on the iTunes App Store. A little bit retro, making an artwork app in a sense, but it's an exciting thing because in both cases, the loops will be served up in random order continually. So it's getting back to using the chance procedure algorithms to show all these different loops in different orders all the time, removing the idea of duration, which is an idea that kind of fascinates me. The idea that we're moving into a kind of era where traditional duration is changing, and we're experiencing a new form of time in a sense. You know, time was greatly changed when the railways were invented and everything became very ordered, and now we've all got access to incredibly precise time, and with digital clocks and watches in our computers. And I think we're actually moving beyond that now into a new sense of time that is, again, cyclical. So anyway, that's it for that takes me from the past to right now. So.
Well, thank you very much, Clive. Thank you very much. Your work is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Clive or compliments to give, praise? You know, we give that out freely here. Looks like, oh, there was one question I believe in the chat earlier. Michael Pointer wanted to know what did Annie Albers think of the work that you did?
I hate to say this, I don't know if she's alive or not. I assume she wasn't, because does anyone know if she's alive?
Oh, well.
I would love to show this work to her and tell.
I just Googled her. She's been dead since '94.
Yeah, that's
so.
You know, every now and then you think someone's dead and they're not.
I just was curious, you know.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to show it to her? Yeah, no. Yeah. Is there any other written questions or?
Scrolling through, it looked like it was just all praise. Not too many questions, but all praise.
It's such impressive work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's very strange to go through all those years of work in 14 minutes. You know.
I'm going to ask something about this. I was the one who talked about discernment. I'm going to the opposite side now. You know, when you're working, it's interesting how all three of these presentations did sort of bring together time and space questions that are very, very interesting. But what we feed it, I guess I'm still trying to take control as an old fuddy-duddy artist, but what you feed into it, does that matter what comes out? I mean, you know, you do this live. I love that your whole thing is about something that is alive and totally changing and random. I just wonder if what we put into things, like, again, I'm thinking about with an AI situation, what we feed it, also determines what comes out. You know, like your question about famous and not famous, along the multi-layering of that idea for me, along with the live presentation, really set something off in me, and more than maybe some of the pieces that were more difficult for me to get the internal subject matter or something. I don't know if that's a question, but maybe you can.
I think I can think in the middle of that of something that I do think about. I can speak to that where, well, I mentioned Indian classical music, and I'm not an expert in that by any means, but and this actually relates to a lot of jazz too. But there is a rigid structure for a musical piece that then allows improvisation within that structure. And so unless you get into open jazz and tremendous amounts of improvisation, usually the music we hear that has improvisation is actually relatively structured. And so again, the musical analogies I was talking about. So the works I've made, including these algorithms, have a rigid structure, and that is really critical to how they turn out. You have to, in a sense, support them, you know, hold them in the right way so that they can then do their magic.
Thank you. Thanks.
Can I have your turn?
All right. I'm not sure if I saw this, but Michael Price, did you have something that you wanted to add? Because it looked like you were wanting to comment and then stopped yourself.
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, I would partial comment, partial question. I really think that the natural rhythms is like a really key element in here, that it's not just random, as we would see random like being noise. And I think that's a huge thing. And I guess I feel an affinity for a lot of what you've done, Clive, going back to my game design days when we were trying to design AI and artificial life within games to create natural senses of opponents. There's this thing of you're still creating algorithms, but you're looking to this thing of what does it feel like organically? And I think that comes through really, really well. And my question was, the people that see your work or that don't know the inner workings of the algorithmic quality, do they ask you about that, or is it such that the surface end result is interesting enough that they don't understand kind of the smarts behind the whole thing? And I found that in my work, a lot of people just do not get it at all. And I was just curious, sort of what your response, how people have responded to your work that way.
I love to quiz people that are looking at my work in a gallery. It's a bit hard on them sometimes. I walk up and say, "So, what do you think?" But the word mesmerizing comes up. You know, the idea of being hypnotized by the things. I mean, finding the right vocabulary is part of their challenge. What I try and do is create a doorway in any artwork. So the doorway might be attractive colors. So someone comes up and they go, "Look at the colors there. That's the doorway." And then as they enter into the building, they go through a lobby, and then they enter and they go into the full. And so part of what's keeping them going into the building is the color and then rhythm. Because if they look at pretty colors for more than 10 seconds, they're going to start seeing and kind of hearing the rhythm you're talking about. And rhythm is critical to the whole thing. And I really think it's an under-recognized issue in time-based art. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. It's not talked about enough. And rhythm was a big word in painting in the 1950s and 40s even. And they talked about it a lot in that house down the road from Colin there, where expressionism, American abstract expressionism got going. They used the word rhythm, and it's kind of died out of favor. It's not really part of what people talk about in visual art much anymore. And yet we're moving into time-based art more and more and more. And Instagram is half video now, and nobody talks about rhythm. I think it would be really good if we did, because if you're making something, you know, it lasts a certain length of time, and you structure it, you shape it, you hold it with rhythm, and it's pretty rare to get into music that doesn't have rhythm. It's obvious in music, and it really is obvious in moving visual art as well.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. I agree with you. Because things that have a definite loop, when it loops back, you see, oh, I'm back at the beginning. With your work, you know, there isn't that sense of beginning and end, which I really, really love about it. So that was, yeah, thanks.
Thanks. No problem. My favorite analogy really is a pop song, something that everybody can understand. If a pop song doesn't develop in the first 20 or 30 seconds, we stop listening. You know, we want, you know, the first few seconds is establishing a pattern. Oh, there's that. Okay, that's the beat. And then you can put up with exactly the same beat for maybe 1 or 2 more repetitions, but it has to start developing. There has to be some variation in that, or it becomes dead in our minds and we're not interested. So, you know, this is the basis of time-based art, whether it's sound or visual. It's important for us to embrace rhythm. Rhythm and organic variation. I mean, those are my 2 things really, organic variation and rhythm. So.
Well, this was definitely a lovely discussion, and I'm glad I was able to catch Michael wanting to say something and stopping himself a little bit. But yeah,
I got a question real quick.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, so Clive, I know like when we spoke, we did just sort of a call together a while back. You mentioned you were interested in exploring, you know, the use of NFTs, and I think that's definitely, you know, your work relates to NFTs, and certainly, you know, video work in general seems to have found a pretty nice home in that technology. What are your thoughts on it, and you know, how do you envision, you know, utilizing that type of medium as a vehicle for your creative endeavors?
I'm excited about it, like everyone else. It's an obvious possible huge thing for digital art. At the same time, I'm trying to stay focused on the term digital art and digital artworks while I think about NFTs. I don't want NFTs to take over my thinking. So I've investigated it quite a bit. And when I talk to people who aren't that up on it, I use the term digital art marketplace. You know, things like that. I'm using terms like that so that we don't get wrapped up in this jargon and I can't understand. I've got an ongoing conversation going on with my gallerist about it, and that's been very interesting. And I'm trying to keep it to these terms. NFT has now become a term that everybody has heard of, but once you go beyond that, it becomes really hard to have a discussion. It's a little tricky from Canada. The Canadian banks are, you have like thousands of banks in the United States, and in Canada we have 6 big banks, and they control things a bit, and they're not being all that happy about cryptocurrencies right now. So that makes it harder to work with NFTs. It's not impossible. So that's been part of the thing I've been wading through. Also, the current charges right now, the minting charges, are incredibly high, and so I've been, you know, waiting for those prices to come down, and there's not. And I asked and Andrea about this the other day, and he said that you know, the future might include more other currencies that are more stable and become more affordable. So that's, you know, a bigger issue. I think it's here to stay in general, and it's going to be. It is the sea change. People think it is, but I'm also like cooling my jets a little bit and being patient. So. You know, what I did is I tell you one thing I did is I opened up a brand new bank account, especially for you know, I didn't want to connect my usual bank account to, you know, these various places out there. So that was a good thing to do. It's a little bit of safety. And then I put $200 in that account. And I said, that's the money I'm going to use to try and get some NFTs going. That's my budget. And so far, I have not been able to mint an NFT for under $200. They keep saying it's more than $200. So I think, no, you know, that's my budget. I'm trying to be disciplined about it. You know, obviously.
I put a link up to a website that has NFTs. It's on a different blockchain, and it's very, very inexpensive. $200 will last you like a year on there.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Yeah, and a lot of artists have started going to this.
Oh,
site, so
you've got the link right here in the chat. Thank you.
yeah, check it out. It's much more kind of fine art oriented than a lot of the other ones like Super Rare and things.
I'm going to check that out tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Well, maybe I'll be on by tomorrow evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. In some places it's hard to buy Tezos or Tez. You may need a VPN if it's not available where you are.
I see.
But go to their documents. They have sort of, FAQs and how to get set up. And there's a guy where if you message him on Twitter, he just sends you to Tez, which sounds like nothing, but it actually lasts for a really long time.
Thank you. And, I really appreciate the help you've already given me, even though we've never.
No problem.
Your interviews and stuff. I really like the spirit you're bringing to this. So you're being very generous with
the NFT community is in general very open and friendly. And I think we all went through a period where we didn't know what we were doing and were really confused and frustrated. So that's so recent for almost everyone in the space that we're all willing to help other people get on board.
I really appreciate your help.
All right. It looks like Malavika has a question. 1 second. Did you have a comment, question?
No, sorry, by mistake I have raised the hand. That's why I messaged them. But we also have the same problem of NFT in India too.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, it is right around 3:40, so we're actually 10 minutes away from our start time for the collab exhibition. But that being said, thank you very much, Clive. It was a pleasure to have you. And the discussion that followed was also great. So everyone's clapping for you. Well, most of us are on mute, but it's okay. All right. Well, is everyone here ready to start looking at the collab exhibition? Yes, maybe, possibly, potentially.
Yes.
I wish I had some music to go with this, but I don't.
Yes, desperately waiting.
It's this first one is very small, but there is quite a bit of work put into it, and a lot of time and effort, a little bit of frustration because artists have to have suffer a little bit with what they do, or that's what I've been told at least.
Devo, is it possible that maybe those of us in this first collab could just maybe raise our hands on screen so people who know who's in it? Or
yeah, I was actually going to invite the people that are currently in attendance that participate to talk a little bit about what happened and their experience with the collab.
Do you want to do that later after you show it?
Can we see?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right.
So for you guys that weren't here in the very beginning, I talked it over with a couple other artists involved in the group, and sort of the decision was made to just embed the show directly on the homepage at techspressionism.com, just to maximize the visibility. So when you're sharing links, trying to promote it, if you're one of the artists involved in the show, you can send them directly to techspressionism.com. I just moved everything that was on that collab page right to the homepage, and maybe at some point I might port the stuff that was right at the top of the homepage to an about page, like the definition and stuff like that, just to make it a little less lengthy. But I think that moving forward, we'll keep whatever the current show is, the top line content, so that way it keeps the homepage fresh. But yeah, if you guys want to check out the show while Davo is giving his intro on it, you can just go right to techspressionism.com.
All right. Okay, so I think we're ready to get started. I'm going to go ahead and enter, and I'm going to full screen this if I can, because hold on. Is it attempting to hold on? I'm not even sure what it's trying to do. Interesting. Technical difficulties, always a pleasure to deal with. Huh. Well, it's not actually doing full screen, but it's all right.
It might. I wonder if it doesn't work in embed. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, maybe just go to the direct link.
Yeah. So I think that's what I might end up doing. Apologies, everyone.
And that's now public on Kunstmatrix as well, so I believe it should be searchable. It was privately published up until this morning.
All right, here we go. That's more like it. Okay, I'm going to actually go up to what's written here first. Try to give you a little bit of a background about this whole thing or how it started. So this whole idea was kind of taken from the, that famous collab between Basquiat and Warhol all those years ago. And, as a digital artist and as, someone that kind of very much, not say idolized, but, he's a major figure for me now. Very much fan of Basquiat and his work and what he did. And I came up with this idea of trying to have, members of this community, this growing movement, have a project where, they can have conversations with each other through their artwork. And that's kind of what kicked off this idea, this collab project. And I wanted artists to be able to, if they felt a certain kind of way about a piece that was produced, that they could respond in turn with a work that they felt was appropriate as a response. So a lot with communication and emotion, and I feel that falls right in line with what a lot of we're trying to do with this movement. And we had 8. We originally had 10. It went down to 8 participants. It was 5 pairs. Now it's 4. It's Roz and Nagin, myself and Diana, Colin and Patrick, and Gary and Diane. And we have 3 works of art from each pair. There were more artwork submitted for a couple of pairs, but you could actually see that if you go to the information pages for each piece. But I think we'll start with Nagin and Roz's pair. We don't mind, so here we go. And Roz or Nagin, did you guys have anything you want to say for your work?
Well, I never have anything to say. No. I'd love to say a few things, and then if Nagin has something to say, I would welcome that too. I've only collaborated a few times in the past, and funny enough, it was with a digital group that I worked with and started in New York City called Picture Element, where we did sort of a exquisite corpse idea. But when you're working with a new medium, collaboration is just, it's a wonderfully inventive and opening kind of process. And I guess what I love most about this is here I am outside of New York City in Shelter Island. And I'm working with a woman in Iran, in Tehran. I'm reading the newspaper every day about things going on of tensions between our country. This is a couple months ago, and even the more recent ones. And here I'm having this incredible dialogue with this woman who I've never met before. And we even did a Zoom together, but we just kind of both jumped in, and she sent me an image of a bird singing by a composer who was an Iranian composer. And I came back with not a bird. She actually sent a very abstract, lovely piece. Maybe it's, it's in the 6 pieces that you can see if you go into the full exhibit. And I responded with a cardinal that I was looking at, and I felt a certain melody. And then I don't know how it sort of got into The Wizard of Oz and the whole piece kind of being called Surrender Dorothy. I don't know about people who go into Washington, D.C., but that we started talking about The Wizard of Oz somehow. And it was just an interesting collaboration. And as women who want to have our voices always be able to sing, the piece, sort of the overall theme of the piece is Surrender Dorothy. That's what it ended up being. And of course, we wrote the word never, as in never surrender. And there are different languages in the piece. And that's where the secrets of art can be so beautiful, where whether you can read these languages or logos, it's telling a story that we created together. And it was just a wonderful experience to work with this talented artist in Iran. And would you like to add to that, Nagin? And we do have this up at OpenSea, and I think Colin has I put it up as a collection. I've been in NFT nightmare hell, but you know what? I'm learning. And if you go there, I don't think it even tells the size of the piece, but you know, you just gotta kind of jump in there and go, you know, it'll be fine. Anyway, so Nagin, would you like to say something or?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you so much for all the possibilities. Yeah, I really like the collaboration and all this intercultural communication because on one hand you see how other artists work and approaches to the subject and how they develop the work, and when you work together somehow you mix this way or style together, like you find new ways to work on your piece, like you take another way than you usually do because of the collaborative artwork. So yeah, I think somehow the work that born in there is a different type of you usually do. So sometimes it opens a new way to experience and continue to your other practice. Yeah. And yeah, I really enjoyed working with Roz. She's very special person and amazing artist, of course. And yeah, we connected very beautifully, I think, because I started with like visualizing, visualizing.
Got it. Visualization. You got it. That's
sorry. Of a piece about life and actually immigration to the other world by dying or dreaming. So the piece called Birds Went to Watch the White Seas. So we kind of start composing the way we were looking at the life. So I remember that's why we got to the Wizard of Oz, because we were talking about what you look for in the life and search. So yeah, thank you.
We got into some pretty intense discussions pretty early, and it was interesting. We did a Zoom call together too. And I don't know, we've made friends across the pond and art across the pond. So that's a good feeling in these times, opening the borders. And I think digital art can really do that on so many layers with a new kind of universal language. Thanks again. It was wonderful. And thank you, Evo, for curating the show. And of course, Colin, for making this happen.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for participating. And actually, you know what? We'll give you a round of applause too. So thank you. All right. Next up, our second pair on this. Whoa, the camera's a little funky sometimes. It's okay. Probably should do like a guided tour. But our next pair on this wall was Gary Hopkins and Diane Marcella. Are you two, either of you in here? I think Gary.
Yeah, I'm
I
here.
saw. Okay, Gary's in here. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Gary, did you want to speak a little bit?
She must have left.
Oh. Well, did you want to chat a little bit about your experience with the collab?
Yeah, I mean, this was back in December, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We started doing it. So I think Diane and I both work in Photoshop, so it was a good match. And she likes to start from photographs, whereas I work from a more traditional layering build-up process. So it was kind of fun to have someone hand you something and then you react against that. So it's very much process oriented type of art, or at least it was for us. It was more of a reaction to what was done, and then what she did, and then I worked on it, and then she worked on it, and so we kind of bounced back 3 or 4 times on each of these. I can't say that we had any deep story or narrative we were trying to do. It was more of just creating something interesting visually based on stimulus from another person, which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Because I work with a lot of bright, intense colors, and she likes to work with more photographic things. But she would take it and move it and bend it in certain ways, and then I'd think, oh, okay, I'm gonna try this or try that or introduce this, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, Davo.
All right, well, I'm glad to hear it, and thank you for participating.
Yeah.
The works look lovely. And I wish Diane was here to be able to participate. I thought I saw her earlier, but
she was here earlier, but
yeah,
she probably didn't. She dumped it on me after dark.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Tommy was saying that these would probably look great if you printed these on fabric, and I think I would agree. Like, I think these works would definitely lend themselves to be printed on fabric very well.
Yeah, I do a lot of my digital prints on photographic paper that's mounted on dye bond, which is an aluminum substrate. But I like the softness of like prints. I've always loved printmaking, and I love paper and paper textures. But you guys would talk a lot about dye sub printing on aluminum, and I think it would really pick up on the bold colors and really help reflect that color that, I mean, since we work on screens, it's not light reflecting off of paper or off of canvas. It's light coming through into our eyes. So it's very different aesthetic behind that.
Right.
And I think dye sub printing might be really interesting.
Yeah.
Do any of you have any questions about the light fastness of dye sub?
I'm sorry, the what now?
Light fastness. In other words,
You mean the archive?
Yeah, archival. Yeah. In other words, the idea is like I haven't been using dye sub for a long time because of its tendency to fade faster than like a pigment print and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I used the methods I did, because I was concerned about archival quality, and I wanted pigmented inks on paper, on archival paper, to make it last.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I mean, I think there's opportunities there. I mean, how long is it going to be worth? 200 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, us as artists and making a beautiful piece, is one thing, but I mean, a lot of this has a little bit less to do with the art than rather than a gallerist being able to show it to a collector and say, this has provenance, and this is going to hold its value for 200 years and all that sort of thing. When we know darn well that that unless it winds up in a museum or it winds up going down through the family for 3 or 4 generations, it's which in a rich family it very well could. I mean, I had some relatives who had a Gainsborough up on the wall and that sort of thing. So I mean, it's like, okay, but it's just like it's but the one thing is, I think that if you take like dye sub and treat it properly, it's pretty stable, so
I found that the dye sub just doesn't have quite the same punch or the same crispness as a photographic paper. I couldn't be happy with it on my works. I've tried.
Yeah, I've printed on fabric, canvas, aluminum, and photographic paper, and the one that had the most punch for me, and I seem to get the truest colors, was using Fuji photographic paper. Putting that on a permanent substrate, that can afford.
Yeah, sure.
Now, speaking of Patrick,
now
we're at you and Colin's work. So which one of you would like to say something first?
Well, the one thing I thought was really interesting about this collaboration is the fact that, you know, we were familiar with each other's work, you know, for what, about 17 years now, because we went to grad school together and that sort of thing. But I think the thing is that Colin, in some ways, I think has stayed, you know, maybe a bit more consistent with some of his things. But the thing is actually the stuff that I've been going into in this route actually kind of goes back to the Kandinsky stuff, which is the stuff I was doing in the 1990s and that sort of thing. So, you know, Colin, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you know, I think that, yeah, it was definitely really interesting, you know, to work together with Patrick and like you said, you know, we had been familiar with each other's work, but I think both of us have like sort of multiple, you know, different series that look markedly different from each other, or different bodies of work and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think these two, like, you know, these calligraphic works that he's been working on with the Playform AI engine. I mean, I definitely relate to that work. I had a bunch of work that I did during grad school with Sumi Ink and sort of based around the idea of Shoto calligraphy. And then, you know, I have this sort of wireframe series that has been ongoing in my work for probably, you know, close to almost 20 years now. That's just part of my visual language. So I think that the two of them combined, it was really interesting, you know, and it was like, I found it was tough to know when things were done. Like I sent a bunch of work back to Patrick thinking like, okay, you know, we're all set. And then he sent me some responses again, and I was like, wait, okay, I wasn't sure, you know, that we were continuing with these, but it was interesting, you know, and these are also, you know, minted as NFTs. So one thing real quick, you know, if you guys haven't used Kunstmatrix before, on the top left there's a little info panel that has a link, and you don't need to necessarily click it because it'll take you out of the full screen view, but that'll jump you into the pairing page for each pairing. And that pairing page has bio information for each artist as well as social links. And then on this set of works from Patrick and myself, it has a link to the collection, the NFT collection on OpenSea, as well as for Roz and Nagin's collection too. And I think Davo, your pairing collection is going to be minted with your and Diane. Your work is minted as well. I just have to add the link still and hook that all up. So, but yeah, you know, and just the process of putting this together and working with Davo was definitely like really, you know, just a really good learning experience in learning about, you know, putting stuff together in Kunstmatrix and what the possibilities are, and also sort of the some of the challenges where all of this work is dimension variable, basically. I mean, it's digitally created. So we had to kind of like set an arbitrary physical size in terms of its presentation within the virtual space just to keep it consistent. And all those things present different sort of curatorial challenges that don't exist when you're hanging a physical show. So I think, you know, it's been an interesting learning experience for sure.
By the way, answering Sarah's thing, there's that my second language is Japanese, and you know, I've been, you know, I've studied you know, East Asian calligraphy, you know, for a while, and the thing that's kind of interesting is that, you know, this idea of taking, you know, Asian calligraphy and then taking automatism to it, you know, automatic drawing and that sort of thing, which is basically what's going on, had to do with like the stuff that I was doing with machine drawing in, you know, during graduate school. So I think what's interesting is I think that you and I took sensibilities that we've been exploring for almost 20 years, and, you know, both of us, and we're both familiar with, you know, but the thing is they've developed a lot, and then and then threw them together. In other words, in some ways we kind of went like that, you know, and I thought that was really kind of cool as we went from commonality back together.
And I forgot too, like, you know, now that it's zoomed in, some of these actually started with little detail crops from like my current painting, so you could see the texture of the linen and some of the palette knife, you know, marks and that kind of stuff in it. That was, you know, visually, the colors were manipulated.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? One thing I'd like to share is if I could do a share screen just for a second, is that, you know, I think we've both been going forward with some of these things, and actually this stuff has out on my Pat Lichty _art, you know, kind of triggered me into doing you know, some next steps for me, you know, with this is that there's let me see here. This is a piece that is my first kinetic version of this. So, and it has some sound that it has some music that I wrote and all that sort of thing. So, except I don't think it has any sound, but you know, you can kind of, I'm doing this in After Effects, and I'm taking the different layers I normally use in Photoshop, and then starting to break them apart and rotate them and scale them and that sort of thing to kind of give the whole thing a bit of depth. So this is, you know, this is my first, like, what I'd say, like next generation NFT for you know, this particular genre.
So Patrick, you said you're using After Effects?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so the things here I use the things that are in the gallery, I use Photoshop, and then you know, the kinetic stuff I'm using After Effects.
So what size did you guys come up with? I mean, so I get an idea of what Kunst Matrix does. Are those like 30 by 30 or 40 or 60 by 60, or what did you come up with?
I believe the maximum dimensions, like, for that can be uploaded to Kunst, I think it was 5,000 by 5,000 pixels.
Yeah.
But there's also sort of like a file size limit, a megabyte limit.
File size limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the file size limit, I believe, is 5 megabytes. I think
so. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, the largest it's really ever going to be presented on screen, you know, you'd be looking at maybe like a 4K display zoomed all the way in.
Yeah.
So like 38, 40 pixels maybe on the wide dimension, something like that. Anything over that, really, you can't zoom in beyond like 100% on Kunst Matrix. But if you wanted to then, you know, have it made available otherwise, like as an NFT with an attachment, you know, bundled media or whatever else, like, you could always create it larger and then place, you know, a res down version within Kunst Matrix.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also that pairing itself was by design, just putting that out there, because I knew that you two had known each other for a long time, and I was like, you know what, two friends working together, let's see what comes from it.
It was pretty harmonious. I'm very pleased with it.
Brought me back to Dr. Hirschberger's critical theory class.
Anyway.
So I figured that you guys would probably work fairly well together.
Yeah.
So
that would be all right.
You did all right.
I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it.
Good.
Anyway, thank you so much, Davo.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, and now the last pairing that we have is myself and Diana. Diana, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, can you hear me, Davo?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, great. Yes. So the piece that I started with is called Psychedelia, and it is a fractal. And I work through synesthetic vision. So this was an art piece that came to me through vision, and I tend to see very high color, high dimension pieces. And it had motion to me. And when I took this fractal, I reconstructed it with tens of thousands of different primitive shapes. I used quadratic Beziers, I used circles, I used rectangles. And so when Davo and I got the chance to work together, I wanted to find something that had such a, you know, unusual form and what I saw motion, and I wanted to see what he would arrive with. So I was pretty excited, pretty excited.
Yeah. And I kind of just ran with that whole idea with this one, because this was the first response that I did to that first piece, Psychedelia, which honestly to me this is my favorite one anyway. So you're the first two pieces in the collaboration were the two favorites for me anyway. But her piece Psychedelia actually gave me the kind of feelings that how do I describe it? I sometimes experience sleep paralysis, and with sleep paralysis, sometimes you get hallucinations. So sleep paralysis based hallucinations, and they used to be scary for me until a couple years ago when I figured out that I could kind of channel how those hallucinations presented themselves. And what ended up happening was, rather than seeing like scary looking shapes and spiders and shadow people and stuff like that, what ended up happening was like the creation of like these really psychedelic scenes. Like there would be a lot of colors, a lot of vibrant colors, a lot of blacks too. Like there was black circles and shapes, and it was constantly shifting and changing. But that's what her initial piece Psychedelia reminded me of immediately. Like that's what I felt, and I was like, I felt that before. And so with this, what my response was kind of like a continuation of that and kind of expanding on the idea. And it was a lot of fun, and we kind of actually went back and forth with, well, for me, it was me responding to the kinds of feelings that Diana's works evoked in me. I can't really say that for her. So was that for you as well?
Yes, it was. I had two other responses to this that aren't visible because we only provided 3 pieces per collaboration. Right. But I remember, I think my response to your initial, oh, there we go. There we go. Yep. Yes. So I started deconstructing, because I like to deconstruct my fractals and reconstruct them using primitive shapes. So I did that with his, and I took all circles, and I always use a defined number, and which I don't know right at this moment what I chose for this, but I'll run an algorithm and say 1100. And then it passed to you, and you totally did something different.
Yeah, with this one, there was symbolism that I threw in there, like this middle piece here, actually. I was looking at symbolism for hope, I believe. And there's a symbol for hope that actually is very reminiscent of this, and that's where this kind of came from. Because these are actually titled pieces. I believe this one actually was Count on Hope.
Yes,
it's been a minute. Yeah, Bet on Hope. Yeah, but so there was actually kind of like a narrative that ended up developing through like the titles too. That ended up happening. So this one was Freed. This was the first one was Psychedelia. Then there was Freed, and then in response to Freed, it was I can't remember this one. It's in my folder.
No name. Yeah.
I don't think, yeah, there was no name.
No.
And this one was Bet on Hope. And then you responded to that with this one, yes. Which for me, it was like it kind of condensed everything down and kind of really focused it. Yeah.
Yes. And it had a little, I mean, things are very tactile for me with synesthesia. Yeah. So I could feel the temperature, I could feel the texture. It was metal, it was glass, it was.
Yeah. So it felt really just kind of rough, and I don't know, I kind of also got the idea that like it was almost like it was being passed to me, like it was an actual ball that was being
Yes.
passed to me.
Yes.
And so this last one, I don't think I actually showed it to you. I forgot to send it to you because I finished it. But it was this was me kind of like throwing it back. It's like I'm releasing it back to you. So that's where that kind of motion and shape came from.
And you took it apart and you made it lighter and freer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
yeah. So this was the first time I'd ever actually collaborated with another artist before. So that experience in and of itself was a very valuable experience for me.
Oh, really? What things did you feel you got out of that? Because most of my work's been collaborative.
Really? Well, I don't know. For me, creating artwork is a very a lot of times it feels very isolated.
Yeah.
And like you're plugging away in your studio, you're working by yourself, you're creating stuff, you're literally in your own head the entire time, like you're in the studio pretty much.
Yeah, and that's why I like collaborations. You can,
yeah,
it's more of a conversation, you know.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't feel so very lonely anymore. You are having a conversation with someone visually and sometimes through words too. But you feel a lot more connected than you would normally be.
Yeah.
And that was a very positive experience for me. And I wanted to experience that. And that's kind of actually another motivating factor for me to create this project, because I was like, I want to feel that.
Yeah.
I want to feel something. I want to feel that connection. So, and I did. And I want to do it more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Dava, could you, before we close out the recording, could you just click one of the pieces and show the people how they jump to the pairing page?
Oh, yes. So from here, so you click on the piece as you would just like an icon or something. And then this little window in the top right corner pops up. You click that eye. And then from there, you click this, which immediately, well, depending on how your browser's set up, for me, it opens a new tab and it has the full collab pairings. So for me, there was 6 pieces. For Colin and Patrick, you can actually go ahead and do it.
And there's a link on the bottom right too, I think, within Kunstmatrix.
Yeah, we got
just a direct link. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those, so each one of those on the pairing page is clickable to a full screen view.
Yep.
And then the ones that have an NFT, there's a link directly to the NFT in the description off the full screen view.
Yep. So let me go and back to Roz and McGean's.
Yeah, and I think at the bottom of their pairing page too, there's a button link to the OpenSea collection.
Yeah, right here. So it's view NFT collection
That's
OpenSea.
super.
Yep, and there you go.
Yes.
But yep.
Sweet.
Fire stuff.
This is a lot of fun to do.
It is.
It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Davo and Colin. Thank you, everybody.
Very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
for
guys.
sticking through
Thanks
this
for
whole presentation.
participating.
And yeah, thank you for participating.
Slick presentation, like really impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, the whole thing. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
When's the
oof. Is that James trying to speak?
That was me trying to ask when is the next collaboration? Come on, guys. When's the next show?
This next one is currently in the works. There's been a couple of hiccups with that. Actually, little bit of friction here and there with some of the pairings, but it's all good. We'll get through it. And then it'll be up and available after its completion. But we'll work with the second groups, and so we can get started on the third one, because I'm actually streamlining a lot of things for the third one, because I've learned my lesson between the first and the second one now. But so there's going to be actual Google Docs and forms, and the ability for people to actually see in real time who's actually signed up because it's all going to be tied to a document that everyone can see, and it's updated, and you can leave comments and stuff like that. So yeah.
And I actually most likely am going to be passing the torch of the exhibition installer to Brandon Gellis for that that particular installation of this project. He asked if he was interested in getting involved doing some of the production work with the group. So I asked him if he wanted to do the Kunstmatrix install, select the room and decide how to hang the show, and maybe work with Davo on that collaboratively. So, and that could be a way that we sort of rotate in people in these various roles to put these shows together. Yeah.
All right. And I already have people asking me or messaging me about the third one.
Oh, and lastly, Brandon's interview is on the homepage now. If you guys haven't caught it, it's really interesting. He's a professor at University of Wyoming, and within the next couple of days, it's been up for about a week. So within the next couple of days, I'm going to be posting Michael Reese, the interview that I did with him last week, which is a really good interview. He showed some of those inflatable sculptures with the augmented reality components that he shared, at the recent salon.
Oh, we also have an interview coming up, because I actually did an interview 2 days ago, Tuesdays, with C Moses. So there's that interview that's going to be coming sooner than later.
Yep,
So,
and tomorrow I'm doing an interview with Gregory Little.
Well, there you go. So we have quite a few interviews coming up.
All right.
Excellent.
Tons of content.
Yep, tons of content. And we could not have any of this content if it wasn't for passionate people like yourselves contributing and wanting to participate. So thank you very much. We do it for you, pretty much. That being said,
thank you very much for the comments about my work. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for all the kind words about the collaborative show. It's awesome. Everybody did a great job.
Everyone did a wonderful job.
A wonderful
Yeah,
salon.
you guys rock.
Our first opening. Our first opening.
Our first opening, yeah.
Really exciting.
With many more to go.
That was great.
Yeah.
Now we can share with other people. Just going to techspressionism.com and getting that link, right, Colin?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just the homepage at this point. So absolutely, it makes it easy.
Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody you can, actually.
Yeah,
Get
we're
the word
built
out.
a pretty big house.
Great.
Which is good.
Yeah. All right, everyone. It's
You
been a
wanna do
pleasure.
a reverse countdown, Davo, to pressing the stop button.
Yeah, I could do that. So thank you all for joining and participating. It's been a pleasure to have you all and see all of your wonderful faces.
Thank
And
you so much.
And we're signing off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done.